Hello, Frog fans. Welcome to Postgame Beers. I'm Kyle Malloy, joined by my co-host Jacob Sailors and our producer Ray Cartwright. The last regular season series against the Utes begins tonight, but we've got a special edition of the pod today. Instead of recapping, games, we're bringing you a very extra special guest, TCU's Director of Intercollegiate Athletics, Mike Buddie. Mike, grateful for your time today. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, I got to tell you, like the coolest name for a podcast ever. So, I wonder if the Red Sox teams from the old days, if they're like pregame beers.
Oh, yeah.
Well, we haven't met in person yet, but the short version, we each met each other going to baseball games about 8 or 9 years ago and just generally had the same love for frog ball. So about 5 years ago, the suggestion was, hey, let's start a podcast. And at first we laughed and then we just jumped in, not knowing anything that we were doing, and we're still here on season 4. So
still not knowing what we're doing.
But yeah, before we get into your background, Mike, how's the transition been for you and your family coming to Fort Worth?
It's been great. I mean, I'm learning what you guys already know, and that is TCU is a community and a family and just a welcoming culture, and Fort Worth in general, right? I mean, Fort Worth is just It's a big town with a small town feel. It's got everything you want to do, but people know everybody by name and they treat you like a friend until you prove otherwise. So it's been really awesome. And to jump in, mid-season with women's basketball just going nuts and getting a chance to win a beach volleyball national championship a couple weeks ago, people are congratulating me as if like I had anything to do with it. I was just along for the ride and feel really, really fortunate to be a part of this family.
How much exposure to Texas or Fort Worth did you have prior to taking the job?
Well, as a player, I played here. I played in Arlington a few times. Sweated unlike anywhere I've ever sweat before in my life. It was the hottest bullpen in the world. And I played in Venezuela and in Arizona, but Arlington, Texas in August was brutal. And then in this lifetime, in this role, came here in 2021 for the Armed Forces Bowl. And then we also played Army Air Force played football at Globe Life Field in 21 and 22. So in and around. And I will say coming here for the Armed Forces Bowl is a great way to see Fort Worth because it's 3 days in the dead of winter. The weather was decent. You get to spend a day at the Stockyards, a day downtown, and then to play at Carter Stadium as a team in the bowl was like a holy crap moment of this facility is unlike any I've ever set foot in. So I've been in and around the fringes, but this is my first really time being immersed in Texas culture.
I kind of got lucky with the weather because I remember, 2 years ago, Baylor Air Force played, and it was like 10 degrees outside.
Yeah, that's because anything that Air Force does is just bad.
Yeah. So we might have a rivalry, Mike. I'm a Marine Corps veteran, so we might have to fight about that later.
Yeah, it seems like you turned out okay.
I don't know. Jury's still out.
Yeah, I don't know you that well, so yeah.
You don't know JD. All right, so prior to joining us at TCU, you were at the Army's athletic director, and then before that at Furman. What's been the biggest change or maybe challenge you've had in the first couple months, moving to I don't want to say a larger program, but, bigger program than those two?
Yeah, well, the challenge is fairly obvious, right? So, my time at Furman was great. Same color purple, kept all my neckties. But, they play FCS football, which is a completely different animal. And so getting to make that jump to West Point to lead that Army program, we're back at the FBS level, big time college football, but it's a military academy. So they don't deal with name, image, and likeness, and they don't deal with the revenue sharing and all the challenges that the programs find themselves in. So the jump from West Point to TCU has been, that's been the biggest challenge, right? Is kind of illustrating my understanding, articulating my plan, my vision, to deal with NIL. And then the other challenge that all of us are dealing with is we still don't really know the rules of engagement. The House settlement has not been signed. We think we know revenue sharing is going to kick in July, but until that thing is signed and we actually we get to know who the actual enforcement person is, like we're all kind of guessing what the future is going to look like, but none of us knows just yet.
Yeah, that house settlement, that was when we had Jeremiah and Zanati on back over the summer. They were thinking that was going to be signed like April.
Yeah.
And it's been pushed back as amendments have been made. Where does that stand now?
So the judge has it back in her court, pun intended. And so she's made some recommendations. She had some concerns about grandfathering out the new roster limits so that kids don't lose their current roster spots. So that's being handled with the conference at the conference level. It shouldn't be a long holdup, but each time that there's an amendment or a change to the document, both the practitioners, which is us, we get to weigh in, and then the objectors also get to weigh in, which was started by the young man with the last name of House that started this settlement, a former swimmer. They get a chance to kind of put a rebuttal in writing and then let the judge kind of rule. And we think we're getting really close, but Jeremiah wasn't lying. We all thought it was going to be done in April, and then it turned to May, and now we're just hoping here in the next week or two.
And I've noticed with some of the programs around TCU that they're kind of making preparations for that, where they thought they were going to have limited rosters. And now they seem to be adding to their roster in advance of, these grandfather rules with roster limits.
Yeah. And the biggest challenge, and again, it's kind of indicative of where we are. The judge, to no fault of her own, really doesn't fully understand college athletics. And the plaintiff lawyers, they're plaintiffs lawyers. They understand the law. They don't really understand college athletics. So when we all were kind of told, hey, here's what's in the house settlement, like we shifted into fifth gear quickly and started trying to put ourselves in a position to meet all of those mandates, one of which was a reduction in roster spots, because you don't want to wait until it's signed and call a kid in June and say, hey, I know you're chilling on your couch, but there's not a roster spot for you back here at TCU. So all of us really got ahead of it and started having those conversations with kids and saying, hey, we'll honor your scholarship. If you want to come back, we'll certainly pay for what we said we would pay for, but you're not going to have a roster spot. And so a lot of those kids, once the semester ended, they found another landing spot. So if this comes to fruition and they're given the opportunity, those kids can stay where they landed, or they can make the decision to decommit from them and come back to where they originally were. But in all honesty, most of those roster reductions were walk-on kids anyway. And if they found another spot, they'll probably be happier where they landed. But a lot of kids, because of TCU and the culture of this institution, kids don't want to leave. And so they say, well, hey, I wish I could still be, the walk-on backup punter, but I'm still going to enjoy my experience and get my degree from TCU. That would be great. We'll be able to welcome those kids back with open arms.
Interesting.
And to build off that, how do you envision, because right now a lot of the most successful sports here at TCU are those non-rev kind of Olympic sports. How do you plan on supporting them going forward?
Honestly, kind of the same way they've always been supported, with scholarships and attention. So, men's tennis is in the Elite Eight right now. They'll play tomorrow afternoon down in Waco. They're not getting chunks of dollars to do revenue sharing. So the good news is the teams that they're competing against, UCLA and Arizona and Wake Forest and Virginia, they're all doing the same things we are, which is investing in football as heavily as you can, legally and within the rules of the settlement. And then men's and women's basketball are going to be supported. And then there's kind of like a fourth option to fill in the blank, right? Filling in the blank at TCU is a baseball. That's really important. We've had historical success, and we're going to continue to invest in baseball. Minnesota is probably going to use that on hockey. Iowa will probably use it on wrestling. So everybody's kind of got the basketballs and football are a no-brainer. And then what else might they invest in? And so, again, for better or for worse, very few, if any, schools are going to say, hey, we're going to invest some of our money in beach volleyball or tennis, which means it's going to continue to be the level playing field today that it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago.
It's good to hear. There's not really an equivalent to like the president's first 100 days, but if you're looking at a year or maybe 18 months out, are there some top priorities that you're like, this is something I want to do as quickly as possible?
Yeah, I'm going to lower the national budget. I'm going to impose some tariffs.
Tariff Baylor.
to stay on campus.
Yeah, you know what? I started, in earnest in February. So, I've tried to keep my mouth shut and my ears open. I feel really fortunate that I developed a really quick connection with Mark Campbell and was able to sign him to a new contract. Like that's actually something that I've been able to do in this first couple months here. Mm-hmm. But looking out in the future, here's what I love, and I commended Jeremiah Donati for this a couple weeks ago when we spoke. Like the coaches that we have at TCU right now are as good a human beings as I've ever been around, and they're just as good coaches. It's not like, man, they're great people, but they don't know how to develop talent. Like they do it all. So I feel really fortunate to have kind of walked into a situation and been handed the keys to a pretty sweet ride. But honestly, what we're all focusing on for this next 100 days is implementing this new world of college athletics and making sure that we do it right from day one, because essentially starting July 1st, we're going to run payroll for 500 students. Like, if you think about that, that is a new world in every sense of the word. And, we've got a compliance department and we've got our business department, and, they control budgets and price airplane tickets, but they've never run payroll for 500 student athletes. And here's the rub, man. Like, we're not paying kids $10,000 a month every month. We're being very intentional to pay them, $30,000 the month after their portal closes, and then $5,000 a month and $5,000 a month. And then a little bit more like in April when they're going to have to pay taxes for the first time in their lives. And so like trying to be as prepared so that every one of those kids gets the right paycheck at the right time. We have to educate them on how to invest some of it for those who are making enough money to invest. So that it's weird to have a 21-year-old kid and say, hey, this is your senior year. This might be the most money you make in a year until you're 50, or it might be the most money you'll make in a year ever. Mm-hmm. And so convincing them that, hey, you don't need 31 pairs of, Beats by Dre, maybe 2 is okay. But we're not doing them. We're doing them an injustice if we don't talk to them a little bit about, being some fiscal responsibility.
Right.
The Neely's a fantastic business school. Have you gone down there and said, any CPA recommendations for the athletic department?
Yeah, honestly. And again, that was kind of in place already. Neely's been doing some NIL stuff, some branding, some personal branding initiatives. And with President Pullen leaving his role in Neely and taking on the chancellor's role, there's a natural connection there that we've got to take advantage of the folks in Neely who are brilliant and leaders in their field.
What other resources are you providing athletes? Because, to give a class on, finance to the basketball team, a minor undertaking, but we're talking about hundreds of athletes that I'm guessing you'd like to educate on the ways to do this right.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of angles, right? So one is the Human Performance Center that's literally going to be completed in the next 3 weeks is, another opportunity to take care of their mind and their body and soul. And it's not just a weight room. It's not just a cold tub refresh, recovery type place. But we want them to be physically and kind of spiritually. There's a hot yoga place, there's sports psychologists and wellness people, because here's what's going to be unique over these next 18 months for these kids. They're going to be making more money than most of their faculty members that are teaching them, right? Like, that's weird. Here's the other thing. I don't know. I won't judge the three of you, but my guess is 2 of the 3 of you have a DraftKings app on your phone right now, because that is a huge national trend.
Yeah.
And it used to be like, hey, I'm mad at Doug Flutie for throwing that touchdown pass when the line was 6 and it ended up being 6 in the other direction. But imagine the pressure that's going to come with these kids to turn their $300,000 in NIL money to parlay that in gambling on their own contests, or for bad actors who live in and around campuses to pay attention, right? Like, I've never had to have staff meetings before where I've had to tell sport administrators, trainers, equipment people, hey, if your buddy from college that you haven't talked to in 10 years calls you and says, hey, man, how's Josh Hoover? Is he a good dude? Did he really roll his ankle in practice? Like, your radar has to go off. But all of these things, with money comes pressure. And these young people are going to face a lot of pressure that is going to be different and new.
And it's not just the DraftKings account that people around campus may have. It's, all the DraftKings accounts, and then the criticism that these athletes face. How do y'all, prepare and help these student athletes kind of cope with the criticism that may come with, gambling in sports these days?
Well, a lot of it is education and just trying to plant that seed that these things are most likely going to happen, and you've got to tell us when that happens. The FBI is paying attention to all of this. The NCAA certainly is paying attention to all of it. But again, if we care about these kids and the next 50 years of their lives, not just winning us the next 5 games, it's our job to make sure that we've protected them. And here's what I feel good about is I've gotten to meet a lot of TCU fans, and top to bottom, whether you're 25-year-old recent grad or a 65-year-old trustee, you have expectations, but you have perspective. You're not going to go on Twitter and make death threats against a kid for missing a free throw, and it's happening. Like there are, and so part of it is social media training. Like, hey, don't feel the need to go to Instagram and Twitter after every game and read the comments, because it's not healthy. It's not healthy for anybody in a leadership position to get too caught up in social media and all that stuff. But TC fans, there will be issues, but I think ours will be fewer and further between.
How much interaction have you had with the TCU burnerverse?
Very little.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Hey, Mike, I know you're a baseball guy, and I'm sure MK has plenty of questions about that. But I had one specifically because, when we found out you got the job, we were discussing it on our show, and I made the prediction that you were going to throw on a suit and pace around the dugout like 1990s Jerry Jones. That hasn't happened yet, but is that coming in the future?
Well, I'm in the dugout. You just can't see me. I'm around the corner smoking cigarettes.
Ron Washington, I love it.
70s manager.
It's funny, JD. You asked that question. You said, when we heard you got the job, we were discussing. But what I thought I heard was, when we heard you got the job, we were disgusted.
We said who? He's from where?
You're kidding me. How many people said no before they got to this guy?
We're going to have to stand at attention before every game.
Yeah.
Make sure our boot locker's in order.
Well, I'm glad you cleared that up in case anybody else heard the same. I did not say this for the record. I did not.
Full transparency, right? Like, I was never in the Army. People think, oh, well, he was in the Army. He worked at Army. No, I'm as civilian as they get. But I know it was a pseudo comical question, but there is a great level of comfort knowing that you got a guy like Kurt Sarlos. Not only was he a Major League Baseball player, All-American in college, but he's the definition of that mold that I described earlier, of just somebody who is of the highest character, man of faith. He's exactly who I would want coaching my own kid. And so, and he clearly knows what he's doing and recruits his tail off too. So really excited. The amount of contributions we've gotten from freshmen this year has been staggering. To be where we are, having lost, Ben, who was going to be the Big 12 preseason pitcher of the year. That's like the death knell for 80% of Division I institutions. And it's like we haven't skipped a beat. Like, whoever needs to step up, and it's been a different guy multiple times, but it's been pretty awesome.
We touched on fan kind of expectations. We measure success and wins, losses. If we're competing for championships, what is an AD, or what do you look for in success of whether it's a team or maybe just athletics that you're leading, collectively?
Well, wins and losses too, but it's not the only thing, right? And here's what I'll say: fans see about 10% of the picture, right? And they're just like, "Hey, we should win the Big 12 in basketball every year because we have 2 tall players." But what I see is like I see 100% of it, right? So I know what Kansas is paying out of their revenue share for men's basketball versus what we're paying. I know what our rifle range is like versus Air Force and West Virginia's rifle range. So I certainly measure it on wins and losses, but there's so much more that goes into it. It's are you graduating your kids? How many kids are transferring from your program and why? And then for me, I have to have realistic expectations that are in complete alignment with the way that I'm able to resource the program. So some of our teams have have the biggest travel budgets and the biggest recruiting budgets of anybody in the league. And so my expectation for those teams are that we should be at the top of the league versus some of our other ones. But, it's the other things. And we've got coaches here that have been here for a decade or more. And like, this sounds goofy, but like one of the great ways to figure out if your coaches are doing their job is how many weddings are they getting invited to? Mm-hmm. Right. Like that's a true test of like, what kind of relationships do you have with the kids that you're coaching? And so it's things like that. And again, I feel really good, but and by the way, the programs that I'm not able to resource at a level that's on the upper end of being competitive, we're working on that, because TCU should be like the ass kicking team in the Big 12, right? Texas and Oklahoma are gone. Right. Like the big bully role is open for the taking, and we intend to take it.
Dude, it's funny you mentioned rifle ranges and all that. Me and Jacob both know the rifle program, or at least the assistant coach Hannah Black very well. And it's always kind of funny because TCU they kick the service academies' butts in rifle, and they're like, how is our military academies not up to this level?
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. Not only that, when I was at Army, like we would lose to Navy and Air Force, and I'm thinking, hey, they're flying planes and driving submarines. Like we should be able to shoot. But you know what? It's a great example of a sport where you get out of it what you put into it. And when you're at an academy, there's fewer hours in the day to focus on sport. But I love that TCU is so competitive here. And what I'll say is, this is a great place for Olympic sport athletes, because Olympic sport athletes are still choosing their institution on the educational value, the social life, the ambiance, the atmosphere, the city that it resides in, and the type of experience you're going to get. And when we get young people to visit TCU, especially young women, like I don't know if any of them walk away being like, yeah, that's not the place for me.
So recent announcement from TCU, their new strategic plan, lead on values and action, kind of, mapped out, literally a map of the campus and expansion and tons of different things that are going to change. Obviously, one of them that we're highly invested in is just this arrow pointing to Lupton Stadium. Now you've been there yourself now, right? Saw you at the game last weekend. Yeah. What are some things that have you had any discussions with Kirk? I mean, he's openly talked about it's in the future, but we're as fans, we're anxiously waiting on next steps here.
Yeah, and I'm not a big fan of in the future. Like let's come up with a plan. And you mentioned the strategic plan, and what is unbelievably unique about TCU's is that they unapologetically have said athletics is one of the four pillars of the success of this institution. Like most presidents and chancellors would never put that out there. They just wouldn't have the courage to face the blowback from faculty or whoever it might be. But I love that about Chancellor Boschini and Chancellor or President Pullen. They're just like, no, we saw what it did for this school when we went to the Rose Bowl. We saw what happened when we went to Omaha in the college football playoff. And so that made it really attractive for me. So there is a portion of the strategic plan that is a facilities master plan. And there's several athletics projects in there, a basketball practice facility, tennis courts, getting the indoor more in line with the level of our programs, and Lupton. And so, as you alluded to, I'm a baseball guy. I was a little bit surprised when I came up to Lupton the first time, knowing the competitive level of TCU. I was expecting a little bit more, a little bit better, a little bit nicer, which is a credit to Schloss and now Kirk, that they've just been able to focus on getting kids bigger, stronger, faster, and finding ways to win baseball games. But, there's not a lot of places to sit in air conditioning at Lupton. And as I'm learning, it seems to be warmer in Texas than it is in New York. Weird. So not to skirt the issue, but it is in the future. It is on the list, and it's incumbent on me to meet with the powers that be to prioritize those athletics facilities. And it's usually the priority becomes, what are we most likely going to be able to raise money to get done? And so we need to design something at Lupton that incorporates some new premium seating. And there's that natural alley down the right field line where it's just begging to have some more suites in a club area so that people can get out of that heat. One thing I've learned about TCU fans in the short time I'm here is we're more likely to sell out 40 suites before we sell out 4,000 tickets. So there is an appetite for a premium experience that TCU does really well. So the good news is everything that Kirk and his staff need to get bigger, stronger, faster, and better is already in place, but we need to improve the fan experience. And that's going to generate revenue, which will allow us to support the program at an even higher level.
Mm-hmm.
You know, back to the house settlement, is that be one of the good things to come out of the house settlement? Because right now, most of the NIL is from the Flying T Club and donations and all that. And that maybe, you know, with schools, you know, providing revenue to these athletes, now we can get donations from, you know, boosters for projects back on campus like, it used to be.
Yeah, you nailed it. For 3 years, the Flying T Club has raised over $36 million from our donors.
Wow.
To pay directly to the athletes. And so what's great about the house settlement moving forward is starting July, we'll be covering the revenue share that goes to the student athletes, which allows our donors to take a deep breath, pat themselves on the back, hopefully keep working their tails off to keep earning that money, so that they can share it with us to address some of these needs. The other cool thing that's coming out of the house settlement as baseball guys is the 11.7 scholarship limit that's been on baseball for decades, which never made any sense, is a thing of the past. And we'll be able to go up to as many as 34 scholarships, so that these young men can get a big financial burden off of them and their families.
How many scholarships do y'all intend TCU baseball going up to?
We're going to jump to 22 next year. And then we're going to reevaluate at that point. But there are schools in our league that are going up to 30. And so we're going to give Sarlos everything he needs to be as competitive as he's always been. So I anticipate us going up from that number as well.
I think it was Arizona State that said they were going to go the full 34 or something close to it.
Yeah.
I'm curious on how many teams are going to follow that, or if they're going to, because that's going to create a divide pretty quick if teams are not willing to increase, you know.
Well, and all scholarships aren't created equal, right? A scholarship at Arizona State is less than a scholarship at TCU. And so there are schools that are adding 100 scholarships because their cost of attendance is $20,000. Ours is currently about 84. So there's certainly a disadvantage for providing a high level education, but for the kids that understand that, it's not that big of an issue.
Yeah, I've been trying to tell my son, you better learn baseball, buddy, because you're not going on my dime. All right, so MLB pitcher for 5 years, very cool. What would the teammates of Mike Buddie say about you? Man,
well, that's suitable for this podcast.
No, it doesn't have to be.
That allows me to do the job.
Yeah, that's probably more important. You can say whatever you want on here.
Honestly, I think what they would say is that I understood the big picture. They would say I was the best crossword puzzle guy that they've ever come across, and a pretty good card player. It's interesting in a minor league clubhouse, right? There are factions of cliques. There's the Dominican clique and the Latin American clique, and I always found myself in the corner of the locker room with the kid that went to Stanford and the guy from Rice and the guy from TCU, Scott Malone. We flocked together, and I joke, but yeah, we were doing crossword puzzles and reading more than just a sports page. So they would say I was a bit of a nerd probably, but a good teammate, a guy who could get a ground ball from time to time.
Any interesting memories about being a rookie and maybe getting pranked or something?
Well, yeah, I had to dress up as a Hooters waitress.
Those pictures.
Yeah, we're the pitchers.
There are some. So we came in, we were in Baltimore, Maryland, and we were playing the getaway game in Baltimore. And I came in afterwards, and me and several of my teammates who were all rookies, our clothes were gone, replaced with Hooters waitress outfit. And of course we charter. So it was like, well, all we have to do is get through the parking lot onto the bus. The bus is before 9/11. So they drop you off at the foot of the airplane. So we were like, who cares? But no, that time they decided to drop us off at BWI, and we had to walk. But if you saw my legs, I wasn't ashamed at all. I've got great legs. Yeah, there's some great memories of that season. That wasn't the best one, but there's some other good ones.
Yeah, that should be your tagline, not a number one Frog fan. Best calves on campus.
Yeah.
I'll switch it for the next time. If you have me back, which is unlikely at this point, I can tell.
Oh, you can come on. You can come on weekly if you want. You can review games with us.
Yeah.
Over stats.
I have a question about your time on the baseball committee.
Yeah.
Just how much, like, what is the selection process like, and like how much does RPI actually factor in when determining, host, not host, things of that nature?
Yeah, you know what? I wish that we could open it up to media members or anybody who's curious, because I'm a fairly rational guy, I think, and I am better versed in baseball than most people on the committee just because of my background. And I had the blessing of getting on the committee when I was still an associate AD at Wake Forest, which meant I wasn't the AD, so I had a little more time on my hands. I could watch more games and be a little bit more educated. And I walk into that room and I remember thinking, well, I know 62 of the 64 teams. Like the debate is over 4 teams for 2 spots. And we ultimately essentially got there. But some of the things that you see where you just think it's going to be a no-brainer, like just getting the first 10 teams in, and you realize quickly that not everybody sees the world the same way that you do. We don't look at RPI. I mean, RPI is literally how we sort the teams, because you have to sort them somehow. What we talk about is wins and losses and who you played and where you played them. And you know what those 4 things lead to? RPI. Mm-hmm. So it's a metric, but it's completely irrelevant when you're trying to compare a 44-17 UConn team against a 29-27 Ole Miss team. And they've played no common opponents. And Ole Miss, because of the fact that they play in the SEC, their RPI is going to be in the top 20. And UConn, if they were 64-2, their RPI still wouldn't be in the top 20 because of who they play. Excuse me. That's just a really big challenge. And so I learned early. Some people walk into the room saying we got to get the best 64 teams in the field, and I would always argue, it's not the best 64 teams in the field. It should be the most deserving 64 teams in the field. Mm-hmm. And by that, I just mean if it's the best 64, then put all 16 SEC schools in because they have the best talent. Even more so now because they're able to buy kids out of the transfer portal. They're going to have the best talent, but that doesn't mean that they're the most deserving. And so that's what I always tried to fight for, is the Dallas Baptists and the UConns and the Northeastern, who always played great baseball. They have to play their first 30 games on the road, and they end up having good records. And, they may not win regionals, but they're the teams you don't want to play either.
Yeah, especially that Northeastern squad this year. It's got the best, one of the best pitching staffs in the country. Just a quick follow-up on that. How important is representation on the committee?
Very. And it's still interesting. And I wish that we could move a little bit quicker as an industry to make sure. I think every conference should have a representative. I think the CFP has it right, where they have people in the world that have high character, high credibility, former coaches. I just think that there should be more people and more voices. But it's tricky. You need to get 70% of the vote to get a team into the field. And when you got 4 people from the West Coast and 4 people from the East Coast and 2 people from the middle of the country, like sometimes it's hard to find agreement for 7 of the 10 votes to support one team. So I wish that we could broaden it a little bit, but because of how the committee is set up, there are years where there's nobody from the ACC in the room or nobody from the Big 12 in the room. So I do think it is important.
Hey, Mike, before we let you go, I'm going to finish with 3 questions, and these are going to be the 3 toughest questions of the entire interview, just to pre-warn you.
What did you say? I couldn't.
Yeah.
That actually got me for a second. But before I ask, Travis in the comment section wanted to thank you for the 463 double play promo on Saturday.
Yeah, that was great. Great idea. I actually took advantage of that myself.
Yeah.
Some
Well, hey,
$6 beers, $3 hot dogs.
if they're going to at me on Twitter, like I gotta respond in some form or fashion.
I think that was me that sent you that that clip from UTRGV. You know, I've got a friend down the valley and he goes to a bunch of games, and whenever they do some new promo, he'll send it to me and go, "Hey, this got 6,000 fans out on a random Tuesday night." So, yeah.
Okay, first question: yes or no answer will suffice. If given 2 hours, could you eat 200 Chick-fil-A chicken nuggets?
200 in 2 hours.
That is so much chicken.
Yeah, I mean Polynesian sauce to accompany. Yeah.
What about 300?
No.
All right. In your prime, 100 Mike Buddies versus 1 gorilla.
So I like to think my prime is still like 3 years from now. So this is pure conjecture, but I'm going with the gorilla.
Smart. Yeah, dude.
Okay. Final question. If you're familiar with the 9x9x9, could you complete it? What would be your strategy, and what's your beverage of choice?
I am familiar with it. Yes, I could complete it. Sometimes I just do it on a Wednesday at home just to but you got to go with you have to go with a light beer, so probably like a Mick Ultra, just to keep the bloating out of the conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but no, I'm not going to do it at Lupton, and I'm not going to do it in public. But
that was going to be my follow-up next year. Would you like to compete against us?
Do you remember
against us?
Hey, one of Crash Davis's rules was you don't embarrass the ball club, and I'm not going to embarrass the Horned Frog family.
Hey, Mike, grateful that you joined us today. Promise that when we run into you at the next event. Hopefully we'll get to actually shake your hand, but and hopefully we'll see you at a regional. TCU still has a shot, outside shot to host if they have a strong weekend and Big 12 tournament. So thanks again. Appreciate your time. And the way we always end it is go Frogs.
Go Frogs. I enjoyed it, guys. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Mike.
Go Frogs.